Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 10, Translation and Commentary by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Swami. Kamasya Nindriya Pritir, Labhuji Veta Yamata, Jivasya Tattva Jignasa, Narato Yas Jeha Karma. Life's desire should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation. Since a human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth, nothing else should be the goal of one's works. Purport. The completely bewildered material civilization is wrongly directed towards the fulfillment of desires in sense gratification. In such civilization, in all spheres of life, the ultimate end is sense gratification. In politics, social service, altruism, philanthropy, and ultimately in religion or even in salvation, the very same tint of sense gratification is ever increasingly predominant. In the political field, the leaders of men fight with one another to fulfill their personal sense gratification. The voters adore these so-called leaders only when they promise sense gratification. As soon as the voters are dissatisfied in their own sense gratification, they dethrone the leaders. The leaders must always disappoint the voters by not satisfying their senses. The same is applicable in all other fields. No one is serious about the problems of life. Even those who are on the path of salvation desire to become one with the absolute truth and desire to commit spiritual suicide for sense gratification. But the Bhagavatam says that one should not live for sense gratification. One should satisfy the senses only in so much as required for self-preservation and not for sense gratification. Because the body is made of senses which also require a certain amount of satisfaction. There are regulative directions for satisfaction of such senses. But the senses are not meant for unrestricted enjoyment. For example, marriage or the combination of a man with a woman is necessary for progeny, but it is not meant for sense enjoyment. In the absence of voluntary restraint, there is propaganda for family planning, but foolish men do not know that family planning is automatically executed as soon as there is search after the absolute truth. Seekers of the absolute truth are never allured by unnecessary engagements in sense gratification, because the serious students seeking the absolute truth are always overwhelmed with the work of researching the truth. In every sphere of life, therefore, the ultimate end must be seeking after the absolute truth. And that sort of engagement will make one happy because he will be less engaged in varieties of sense gratification. And what that absolute truth is explained as follows. This verse very clearly states the vital principle of what human life should not be. Life should not be directed towards sense gratification. The positive side is suggested in the verse which follows this. That the absolute truth is the non-dual Brahman, Paramatma, Bhava, that is accepted, that is stated by those who are knowers of the truth. So negative and positive. Negative side means one should not endeavor for sex gratification. Positive side, one should endeavor for Krishna consciousness. One should understand that human life is meant for more than living like animals do for sense gratification. Nayam deho deho vachangulo kashtam kamana te vimuchami bodhivyam punjukayam sarvam shukyatya sva brahma sokyam saranam. Lord Rishabdev advised his sons that having attained this human form of life, one shouldn't endeavor for sense gratification, which even the pigs that eat stool, they have sense gratification. Pigs, they have so much sense gratification. But rather one should undertake divine austerities, which lead one to the mode of goodness and beyond, by which one can attain to eternal happiness, eternal and unlimited happiness. Why do we engage in sense gratification? Because we want happiness. We think it will give us happiness. Modern civilization is especially, actually all materialistic civilization, but modern civilization is extremely materialistic. So modern civilization is based on the principle of sense gratification in an extremely gross way. So everything is advertised with the idea that by using this product you will get sense gratification and therefore you will get happiness. This is the underlying principle of every advertisement. Now many things that are advertised for sale, they don't in and of themselves bring sense gratification. Just like car tires. What kind of sense gratification can you get from a car tire? Well, the children, they take the old tires and they take them out in the lake and they play on them. But that's not the purpose for which car tires are sold. Car tires are sold for putting on the wheel of a car. So it's very difficult to think how you get any. Sense gratification means by seeing, touching, tasting, smelling and feeling. So either by seeing a car tire, by touching it, by smelling it, by tasting it, or by touching it, one cannot get any sense gratification. Yet, it is understood that you can't sell a product unless you promise some sense gratification. You could, an advertisement, they should say, this is the quality of the car tire, it is very strong and this and that. But in the Western countries, the advertisement of car tires is especially well known for being that of having the most lurid pictures of naked or almost naked women, which have got nothing to do with car tires. But they create the fantasy that by buying this car tire, you will enjoy some beautiful woman. But the car tires have nothing to do with beautiful women. But they create this image of sense gratification, that by using this tire, you will enjoy the sense gratification of a beautiful woman, because there's no sense gratification in a car tire. Whichever way you try, you can, by seeing it, even if you paint it pink, still it's just a car tire. Or by touching it, you can touch it as much as you like, there's no sense gratification. By tasting it, you could make car tire pakoras, or it still wouldn't be very nice. Who wants to eat car tires? Any volunteers? So they ridiculously ascribe to it, to the car tire, that this is, if you buy this, then it's got something to do with beautiful women. And they think, oh, beautiful women, that's I want that. Dhanam, Janam, Sundari, that's what I want. Wealth, fame, followers, and especially Sundar, beautiful women. So everything is advertised for sense gratification with the idea that sense gratification will give us happiness. But Rishabdev says, don't endeavor for that. Endeavor for that happiness which is eternal and unlimited. Spiritual happiness, Brahma Sukha. Simply to withdraw from sense gratification is not complete in itself. This verse is a very important verse, but it doesn't give the whole purpose of human life. That one should withdraw from sense gratification, that is true. But then over and above that, one should engage in the service of Krishna. That is not stated in this verse. It doesn't mean that there's anything lacking. It's just it's stating one part. And the next part is stated in the verses which follow on from this. The impersonalists, they see that sense gratification is not the cause of happiness, it is the cause of misery. I find in Buddhism one of the basic principles, teachings, that desire is the cause of entanglement. Desire is the cause of it. Therefore they say we should stop all desire. That is true, that we should stop all material desires. But there's more, we should develop a spiritual desire to serve Krishna. So in the path of Krishna consciousness, of developing Krishna consciousness, there is giving up worldly attachments, giving up sense gratification, and taking up activities that are pleasing to Krishna. It requires a total change of consciousness, completely different to that of the conditioned soul. A devotee may do many of the things that a materialist does, actually. Many of the things. A materialist eats, a devotee eats, a materialist sleeps, a devotee sleeps. A devotee walks on the road, a materialist may walk on the road, but their purpose and outlook is completely different. The devotee generally tries to keep his body healthy. The materialist also generally tries to do so. But their purpose is completely different. The devotee tries to keep his body formed, so that the body may be used for the service of Krishna. And a non-devotee tries to keep his body healthy, so that he can enjoy sense gratification unrestricted. So there's a great difference in outlook. The devotee who is on the path, that means the sadhaka, or one who is endeavoring to become Krishna conscious, he is between the two platforms. If he is a serious devotee, then his aim is only to serve Krishna. Of course, there are different levels of devotees. Here it is stated, Narto yasceha karma vihi. Nothing else should be the goal of one's work. Karma, Prabhupada has translated here karma vihi as by occupational activities. So there are different levels of people and different levels of devotees. There's the Vikarmi, who is engaged in Vikarma. He doesn't care for the rules and regulations of Shastra. He works in this world and simply to get some profit and to enjoy his senses. So such a person is like an animal. Ahara nidra bhayamachu kuchasamana pashubhya naranam dharmo hite isham adhiko vishesham dharme hina pashubhya naranam. Such a person is just eating and sleeping, mating and depending on the animals with no higher purpose in place. The special feature of human life is the endeavor to at least come to the platform of samanya dharma, ordinary dharma, not to speak of paradharma, spiritual dharma. So if one is not following dharma, not following shastra at all, and practically such a human being is like an animal. So such a person is called a vikarmi. Then there is the karmi. Karmi means one who is engaged in work. So in a very general term, in a very general way, the term karmi can refer to any human being. But it particularly refers to those who follow the karma kanda section of the Vedas, with the aim of enjoying life according to the prescriptions given in the karma kanda section. Then higher than that is the karma yogi, who follows the Vedic prescriptions, but does so by offering the fruits of his results to the Supreme Lord. Of course, there are different levels of karma yogi, nishkam karma yogi, sakam karma yogi. Anyway, simplifying. And bhakti yogi, he's also engaged in karma because he's doing some kind of work. So if one is sweeping the floor in the temple, that could be considered karma, but that is Krishna karma. Not karma, but not karma. That is work for Krishna. So that is not included within the karma marga, that is within the bhakti marga. So that is work for Krishna. And that is in a different consciousness of that karma yogi who performs the prescribed rules and regulations of the karma kanda section of the Vedas, but he does so offering the fruits of the results to Lord Krishna. He's still more in the karma kanda than the bhakti marga. So when one acts wholly and solely for the pleasure of Krishna, then he is a pure devotee. But most devotees in this world are not pure devotees in as much as their ideal may be to be a pure devotee. Of course, there are different devotees also. Some do not have the ideal to be a pure devotee. Some perform bhakti, but they want something from Krishna. So there's not really bhakti. Real bhakti begins when one accepts the principle of anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadhyana anukunyena krishnam shivanam bhakti. When one accepts the principle of not acting for any manner of personal sense gratification, either grossly physical or mental or intellectual, then that brings one to what is called uttama bhakti, or the highest stage of bhakti. Uttama bhakti here means that conceptually it is the highest stage. That one is not desiring gross sense gratification or liberation from performing bhakti, but one does it only for the sake of pleasing the Lord. So one may be on the path of uttama bhakti, but still his bhakti may be contaminated by desires for material sense gratification. Even though one has the ideal of being on the high, to come to the standard of serving Krishna, one is endeavoring for, living by that ideal of serving Krishna only for his pleasure. But due to material contaminations, one is still affected by desires for sense gratification. So this is the stage of sadhana, where one is endeavoring, trying to become elevated by personal effort and by the mercy of devotees. Both things. One should take association of devotees who are more advanced and follow their instructions, which means the instructions given in Shastra for elevation to Krishna consciousness. So these instructions for Krishna consciousness, they are broadly in two categories. And that we'll find in Karma Kanda also. Vidhi and Nishedha. Of course, the Vidhi and Nishedha in Karma Kanda, this is very prominent in Karma Kanda, that is quite different to the Vidhi and Nishedha of Bhakti Marg. Vidhi means that which should be done. Nishedha means that which should not be done. So all these rules and regulations are meant, the Vidhi is especially meant for developing one's love of Krishna, and the Nishedha, or the restriction, is meant for restricting us from sense gratification. So we have rules that one should rise early in the morning and chant the holy names of the Lord. One should take only Krishna prasadam. So with every positive rule, there comes automatically a restriction. One should rise early, then automatically with that restriction comes not to rise late. One should chant the holy name of the Lord, one should not talk nonsense. One should take food that is only that food which is prasadam, then one should not eat non-prasadam. So all these rules and regulations are there to elevate the aspiring devotee to the transcendental. Which will be affected if one follows the rules and regulations. Now that's also become. You have to watch this one also. Because you touch the Panchapatra which was contaminated. And the other one also became contaminated by the touch. These rules apply in Karma Kanda and in Bhakti Marga also. There are many such points. And understanding them is important in the service of Lord Krishna. Krishna is Jagannath. He is the Lord of the universe. He is the greatest king. Can you imagine that it is easy to serve a king? How should a king be served? The king should be served in the best possible manner, isn't it? According to his desire. But the king will only appoint as his servants the best, most capable people in the state. So if one wants to be a servant of a king, he has to be very capable. This all has to be before you put anything. Gadada. Don't put that there. Now, take it out. Take it out. It's all, this area all needs cleaning, and it's been, feet have gone there. So it all needs to be cleaned before you put anything. Before you put this back, you have to wipe the whole area. Well, then look, there's water all over the floor. It has to be wiped. You can't see from there, but there's water here. This all has to be wiped. This should have actually been done before the So to serve a king, it's not that anyone can serve a king. If anyone tries to serve the king, if he's not qualified, then he'll lose his job very quickly. He might lose his head also. If one comes to the service of the king and the king says that, alright, do this, and you say, why should? Well, okay. And does it in a very sloppy, whimsical kind of fashion. The king, he has the power to appoint anyone he likes as the servant. So why should he keep such a useless person? So, in the same way, if we are to serve Krishna, we have to serve in the best possible way. One who is serving the king has to act only for the pleasure of the king. He has to subordinate his own desires and do just whatever the king wants, and then he'll be a perfect servant. If in the course of serving the king, he simply works for his own self-interest, then soon he will be detected and removed from the service. Now, of course, the servant of the king, he may have some spare time in which he can indulge in whatever he likes. But even then, if he's an intimate servant of the king, he may be called at any time. He may be, it's his day off and he's having a party, or relaxing at home in bed, but all of a sudden a messenger comes and says, hey, the king wants you to come immediately. And he has to go. So a devotee is serving the greatest king. And Krishna, in the same way, he has to be served according to Krishna's desire. If we think, I shall serve Krishna just the way I like to do, that may be karma kanda, or karma yoga. I'll do what I like and I'll offer it to Krishna. So Krishna, he may formally accept it if it's done according to the Vedic rules and regulations, just for the sake of purifying that person, but he doesn't accept it in his heart. That which is done with personal desire, Krishna, just as the person makes a show of offering it, so Krishna makes a show of receiving it. But Krishna doesn't accept it within his heart. Only that which is offered with love. And love means when one has no desire but to act for the pleasure of that person for which one is supposed to be acting. That's why in Krishna consciousness, one has to know what is pleasing to Krishna and be very conscientious about doing it. Just like I know, I have a reputation for being very strict, or heavy is the word. But should I be anything else? If I'm going to take the position of guru, then I'm supposed to train at least those who are disciples that they've come to me. They've themselves voluntarily come to me. I've not gone chasing behind them. Here, become my disciple. They have come to me. It means they want shasha. Shishya means who want shasha, discipline. So it is my duty to train them. And it is the nature of a conditioned soul to act in a manner that is not proper. The conditioned soul, when he takes Krishna consciousness, he doesn't know how to properly serve Krishna. So he should be trained to put his own thoughts and ideas for my own comfort to the background, and only to act for the service of Krishna. So, if I was not to tell, if I was not to point out, this should be done, that should be done, this should be done in this way, in such and such a manner, then I would be failing in my duty. I should not accept service and honor from disciples unless I'm prepared to train them Training means mostly correcting faults. Mostly what it is. To make them fit for the service of Krishna. Because generally in material life, we always try to find some comfortable position, how to do everything very easily. Quickly just put a broom, or maybe not even a broom, just a cloth, and then quickly go around and finish. Okay, finish. But they don't see behind the cupboard, under the bed, behind the boxes, there's so much dust. And if you just wipe with a cloth and you don't brush the floor, then all the dust, it doesn't go out of the room. You just, by wiping with the cloth, you wipe it round and round on the floor and it just stays there. And then if you brush the floor without taking anything out, I'm just saying because I went through this morning for the 25,000 time. Then if you brush the floor without taking everything out, then one thing is that all the dust underneath things in the room stays there. You can't see it, so you think, oh, very nice and clean. But if you just remove something, you'll find so much dust underneath it. And then whatever you are dusting, all that will go on top of whatever's in the room. So it's a completely useless endeavor to try and clean the room. So as I was pointing out this morning, that others in our society, they may talk about Rasa Lila and so many things. But I would like to see first that devotees know how to clean a room. Because if you can't clean a room properly, then you can't even get to Vaikuntha, because there's no dirt or filth there. They want to speak about going beyond that to Golok Vrindavan. You go to Golok Vrindavan, you can't enter it. One has to have a mood of self, so maybe I can take everything out of the room. It's much easier just to wipe it, finish 2 minutes. It is easier, that's true. But the point is that the room is not cleaned properly. And in this case, Guru isn't satisfied. And if you think I will go to the spiritual world and serve Krishna like that, then no way, you won't be allowed in. Because if one is thinking, I will do, this is my devotional service, I'll do it very quickly and easily. But then that's not devotional service. You're not thinking of the pleasure of the Lord. Oh, I have to go and do my chanting. And now I'm chanting. It's so important to do my chanting. But if there's service to be done, then even chanting has to come afterwards. It's not that, even Prabhupada was saying, this cleaning should be done early in the morning. And then the devotees have said, no, the devotees, they like to chant during that time. Prabhupada said, first cleaning, then japping. Just like that. Your house is burning down. I'm chanting my japa. What do you say? There's some service to do. I'm chanting my japa. Krishna took an impromptu bath in the Yamuna. Someone should go and bring his clothes from home. Some fresh clothes. Anyway, I'm chanting my japa. Think anyone can get admission to the spiritual world with such an attitude? So, I'm pointing these things out. So don't mind. Don't think I'm being nasty on you. Actually, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he explained that it is one of the apparent contradictions within the character of Vaishnava. Now, I shouldn't pretend to be a Vaishnava, but, I am pretending to be a Vaishnava by taking the position of an instructor. He said that those who he is very harsh with, they may be considered very close to him. And those who he deals with very nicely, they may be considered not very close to him. So that seems very strange. But he deals with those who are not very close, those who are not very surrendered. Then he may deal, oh, very nice, yes, because he knows they're not ready for any training. Let them just, alright, encourage them and let them come to the point of understanding we should surrender to Krishna. But then when they come, Shishyaste-ham shadimam tambrapam, when they come as a disciple, then the intimate behavior begins, and they should be instructed. And it's not easy to take such instruction. It's not easy to be a disciple. If one is actually to be a disciple, it's not an easy thing. We say 4 regulated principles, 16 rounds. If you think that's all, 4 regulated principles, 16 rounds, and I get a name, and I'm a disciple. I put my guru's picture on the wall. I offer agavati every day. I'm a disciple. That's not what it means to be a disciple. A disciple means one has to be prepared to take the training. And it may not be very easy. Generally, it's not very easy. Because training means we don't know. Again, I think we're in the darkest of ignorance. We don't know what is proper, what is not proper. Therefore, we have a tendency always to act for our sense gratification, even in the name of Krishna Bhakti. Just like that example, let me just quickly finish it off. You may say, well, it's not for myself. I want to quickly finish so I can go and chant my japa. But that's also the desire to avoid the service. The desire to not do it properly is also a kind of sense gratification. It means that one's consciousness is not clearly fixed on service. Another example, every time especially when formally giving class, the Gita or Bhagavatam should be above the level of the legs. But why is that? You think, well, it doesn't make much difference. But if we sit above Bhagavatam, that means that we have taken the position that I am more than Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is very nice, therefore by my divine grace I'm reading from it. And I'll put it just below me just to show that actually I'm in a superior position, so whatever is there in Bhagavatam, I will explain it according to my own understanding, because I'm in a superior position. This is what is implied. One may not think like that, but it's implied. Therefore, one should also always physically place oneself as the servant of God. Even as a point of basic etiquette, one always sits below the superiors, so one should maintain a superior position to that of Dharma. So, these points, they are important. Same thing. We can't go to the spiritual world and sit above Krishna. Of course, in Golok Vrindavan, one may do so. Out of an intensely developed desire of service to Krishna. But in our present state, where we haven't developed such intense desires for service of Krishna, if we sit above Krishna in the form of his literary incarnation, that will not demonstrate the spirit of service to Krishna. That will demonstrate a spirit of rebelliousness against Krishna. So there's a very great difference between the spontaneity of the Radha Marga and the laziness or whim of the sadhaka, or supposed to be aspiring devotee, who doesn't take Krishna consciousness very seriously. So these are very strong words. One should not live for sense gratification. So we shouldn't think that this applies simply to grossly materialistic people. This applies to ourselves also. We all have desires for sense gratification within our hearts, which manifest in various ways, gross and subtle. One very strong impediment to advancement in Krishna consciousness, which we especially find among grihastha devotees, is the desire to be socially accepted. Now, for grihastha, generally speaking, social acceptance is very important. But I'm talking about the broader society, one has one's relatives, workmates, so as to not be rejected by them. If one rejects some of the important principles of Krishna consciousness, that is very dangerous. One should rather be ready to sacrifice for Krishna. Of course, I'm just talking as a basic principle. It's understood that in grihastha life there may be some adjustments. Grihastha life is not exactly the same as brahmacharya life, sannyasa. But this tendency to adjust oneself to the desires of materialistic people rather than adjusting oneself to the desires of Krishna is a major cause it's a major obstacle in advancement in Krishna consciousness. And it works on the principle sense gratification, because it's difficult to go against society, it's difficult to go against one's relatives, neighbors, friends. So for mental comfort, then I'll just adjust myself. I'll just do what they like. That is a kind of sense gratification. So this is a very important principle, that all forms of sense gratification have to be given up for the sake of serving Krishna. And sense gratification doesn't only mean meat eating, gathering, intoxication, illicit sex. Even the slightest, subtlest desire for acting for one's own benefit, without considering first what is Krishna's desire, without seeing one's own benefit as acting only for Krishna's desire. If one acts in another way, and that is also sense gratification. So, we should go on with this process of sadhana. Chant the holy name. In japa and in kirtan, this will purify us. But at the same time, we have to deliberately take out the desires for sense gratification. Ourselves we may not be able to recognize. And therefore we work under the guidance of senior devotees. Guru is there to cut all the faults, to help us advance on the path of Bhakti. Hare Krishna. Any question about this? If a karma yogi is looking after cows, what will be his position in the next life? I don't Didn't seem to be very much related to the friends. But, you can't say exactly what anyone will get in this next life. Because it's very complex. Generally, the Go-Raksha is considered a pious activity. So if he doesn't perform any other impious activities, then he should get Sadgati, at least a relatively good position. If he's a karma yogi and not a bhakta, then he's not going to get pure devotion to Krishna. Protecting cows in itself doesn't get pure devotion to Krishna. It's a pious activity. It's not necessarily part of bhakti unless it's done specifically for the pleasure of Krishna. Is there any other question? Let me try and see if I got your question right. Chanting Hare Krishna is a prayer, and prayer means that we should express our feelings to God. Communication with God. And especially you were saying that you have many problems, and you're asking, is it also alright to tell to other people? If we tell people not of this world, but we tell to God, they will put us down. So, what is the question actually? We should not ask anything from Krishna. But you're feeling that I have to ask Him to solve my problems. The meaning of prayer is to communicate to God, and I want to communicate all my problems. So yes, the answer to this question is that we should come to a higher level of consciousness. And understand that our real problem is not that I have a pain in my toe, or that the next door neighbor screams too loudly at night and I can't get to sleep, or whatever our problems may be. These are not we have so much tension and anxiety. This is not our real problem. These are only symptoms of the real problem. And the real problem is that I am a rascal because I am not surrendered to Krishna. That is the real problem. So, we can pray to God that, I have this problem and that problem and the other problem, and why don't you do something to solve it? But praying to God like that is something like a prisoner. Someone commits a crime, then he's put in the prison, and then he writes a letter to the prison governor that, in this prison I'm always locked up, and I can't get the kind of food that I like, and I can't go where I like to go. I have so many problems, why don't you solve it? So the governor will say, well, you got yourself in this position, this is what it's like in prison. You came here because of your own nonsense. And I could solve the problem, but why should I? You made the problem because you're a rascal. So praying to God, please remove my distresses. It's like that, a prisoner making a request that please don't make the prison so harsh. Make the prison nice. But the prison is like a prison because the prisoners deserve to be in such a situation. So for them to pray that make the prison nicer, it's the wrong prayer. Rather the prisoner should approach the governor and say, look, I'll make a deal. I'll be a good guy. Then you let me out. He said, okay, but let's see for some time first. Not that you just say and we let you out. So rather we should pray to Krishna, Ainanda Tanaja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddho Kipaya Tavapada Pankajastiti Duli Sadvisham Vichintara. That Krishna, I'm fallen in this world of suffering. I'm suffering here. So please pick me up from this situation and place me as the dust in your lotus feet. That should be our prayer. The prayer that you You put an air conditioner in my cell, too hot in the summer. This is the wrong prayer. So really, if we are to communicate with God, we have to communicate on His terms, not on our terms. He's God, we are the servant. You won't be able to concentrate. Therefore you come here and you take training in what is required to communicate with God. It's not such an easy thing or a cheap thing. I was giving the example of the king. So it's not that everyone can just immediately go to the king. They have to know the protocol. It has to be understood that they're not an enemy of the king. That they've come with a good intention. Now we're in this dark and horrible material world by our own fault. So now we should do what is required to come out of that. I'm going to finish here because there's going to be an initiation ceremony, which is very good. We don't have that many initiation ceremonies here in Mangalore. It's long overdue, so it's very auspicious. I request all of you to stay